Hi guys, today we're looking at an Argus C4. I purchased this one for about $20. The value on eBay for one of these is anywhere between $20 and $30. This particular one is in good condition. The personal significance of this is my first 35mm camera was an Argus C3. I'll have a link to my previous video about the Argus C3 below. I never knew about the C4 and probably couldn't afford it if I did, but I would have loved to have had one of them back then. I had the C3 when I was a kid. These were made from 1951 to 1958. The C4 was an attempt by Argus to improve on the C3 model by combining the rangefinder and viewfinder into a single eyepiece and restyling the body into a smaller, more modern looking design. Argus sold 300,000 of these C4s. They had a modern design, but they didn't have interchangeable lenses. And ironically, the old C3 had interchangeable lenses. If you wanted an interchangeable lens, later Argus released a C44, which was basically the same camera, but took interchangeable lenses. This has a 50mm f2.8 fixed lens called a Centaur. The shutter speeds were from 1/10 to 1/300th. The early models of the C4 only went to 1/200th of a second. The aperture goes from f22 to f2.8. C4s have a hot shoe, which is kind of unique. On the front of the camera, you can see this is the rangefinder dial, and you're focusing by turning that little gear up there. This one's kind of old and stiff. It's actually easier to turn the big ring around the lens to focus. The rangefinder optic goes through the little hole in the center, and then the viewfinder window is right there. This is the aperture ring from f2.8 to f22. The lens is threaded for Series 4 filters, 20.6mm filters, and this is the shutter speed dial from 1/10 of a second to 1/300th of a second, and a bulb setting. I'll put it back to 1/10 of a second. And I'll set the f-stop back to f2.8. On the top of the camera, we have the rewind knob over here. This is the film plane indicator, the hot shoe, the shutter release, the exposure counter. I have to manually set the exposure counter to 20 or 36, whatever your film is, after you load it and after you have wound it to the first picture. And the winding knob. You can wind this with or without film in it, and then that's the shutter off. You will notice there is no release button for rewinding the film, so after you've exposed your roll, you have to lift up the wind knob on the right and then turn it a few degrees to the left or the right, clockwise or counterclockwise, and it'll lock in the up position and release the wind spool so that you can rewind the film with the rewind knob on the left. On the back, we have the viewfinder rangefinder window on the left and the flash sync button on the right. This particular flash sync button has a setting of M and F for medium and fast. That would mean that this is an older model C4. The newer model C4s had an M and an X sync. So this can't take an electronic flash and synchronize properly, but it can take two speeds of flash bulbs, the medium and the fast ones. On the camera bottom, we have the tripod socket and the little latch to open the camera, take the camera back off. To remove the camera back, you just turn it in the open direction and the back pops off like that. It's pretty straightforward in the back. There's not much to look at. I'll take a better picture inside. You can see the, I would say, beautiful aperture rings, and I'll see if I can get this on film so you can see it actually taking a picture. You can see the aperture rings open and close. Kind of loud. but very reliable and very easy to use. Here's the Compure shutter going off at 1/10 of a second in full speed. And here's the shutter going off at 1/10 of a second in slow motion. The film back on, you just sort of put it in place. Now because it has a spring to hold the film plane flat, you have to push down a little bit and then it'll pop right in and you lock it. The viewfinder through the viewfinder window is actually very beautifully done and an easy way to focus this camera. It focuses real nice, and like I said, this one is in pretty good condition. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Here's a shameless plug for my new book. It's about how I went through Navy training, spent 8.5 years fixing radar, bombing systems, and computers, and then eventually transferred into the technical world with Digital Equipment Corporation, fixing computers, programming computers, and teaching computers.